It's Wednesday, May the 8th. Lake level is about 916 and a half, about the same as it was last week. It came up a couple inches. And the water temperature, it's actually just now back up to where it was last week. You know, we had a few inches of snow. I think it was Friday and Saturday, and we dropped about 7 or 8 degrees in water temperature. And it's just now back up to where it was. So it was about 61 degrees this morning. And it was kind of crazy the 1st of May. You know, we had several inches of snow down here. And I don't know if I've ever seen anybody sight fishing for bass while they're on the spawning beds and have it snowing at the same time. I think that's a first. And I don't ever think I've ever seen a television show where guys are sight fishing for bedding fish while it's snowing, all geared up in snowmobile suits and gloves. But it was pretty cold this past weekend. And I got to give out a thanks to the guys at the Steel City Bassmasters Club. They usually come down a couple times a year. They had Dodie and I over Friday night, do a little seminar, and they feed us fillets. So thanks to them guys. And the guys that won their tournament Saturday was Adam Ohms and Phil Tate. They each had a limit of fish, and it weighed 23.93. So that's pretty good. And, you know, there was a tournament Saturday, another one, the OMTT. I think it took 18 pounds to win, about 13 to get a check. Now, you know, fishing was pretty good through the days when it was really nasty. Then the sun came out Monday and Tuesday. And the last 2 or 3 days, I think, have been brutal. You know, we had high skies, very little wind. And we had a charity tournament yesterday, about 120 boats. I think there was a 19 and 2 18s, and then 13 pounds was 4th place. That was a team tournament with, you know, like I say, over 100 boats. It took 11 pounds to get in the top 10. So that kind of goes to show how tough it is. The fish are in, you know, all different phases. You know, I don't think by any means the fish are done spawning. Some guys think they are. I'm still catching fish out on the main lake points, the full eggs. I went back in some pockets today and seen some females paired up with males actually dumping eggs. There's a lot of empty beds, and I don't know, you know, those fish are probably done. Some of them may have pulled back out when it got cold. And I am starting to see a lot of fry, or some fry, back in the pockets in the spawning area. So, you know, if they are almost done, then it wasn't a very successful spawn, because where it got real cold like that, a lot of them fish that laid eggs, I think if it gets too cold, I don't think the eggs can hatch out. But hopefully we've got a lot more coming in so we can still get another good spawn. But as far as, you know, what we're doing to catch fish, it's still a lot of the same, you know, catching them on a grub, in tubes, especially down by the dam in Kimberling City, green pumpkin or watermelon red tubes. You know, fished anywhere from 8 feet to as deep as 25 or 30. When it's real slick and no wind, have a tough time getting a bite, whether it's on the tube or the little smoke grub. You know, a salt and pepper will work. I've been having the best luck with a smoked red flake, especially when it's real sunny. If it gets cloudy, you know, I don't think it's that big a deal. You know, I can get bit on the salt and pepper. Now, when the wind blows, they bite better out there on the main lake points, and I can also catch a few on a jerkbait on the main lake points if we get some, you know, the wind gets to blowing 10, 15 miles an hour. Still catching some fish on flukes, not as good as I was a couple weeks ago, and also some shaky head fish back in the pockets. A lot of the shaky heads I'm throwing is it's a swamp crawler. And it's a watermelon candy or a watermelon red. And I'm throwing it on either an 1/8 ounce or 3/16 ounce shaky head. And I'm setting the boat pretty shallow and just kind of blind casting where the fish, I think, are bedding. And I think what we're doing is pulling the bait over some beds and picking up some fish that way. But like I say, it seems like the shaky head works better when it's real sunny. If there's cloudy, then you can go back in there with a fluke. And if we do have more fish coming in, then that pattern should stay. Now, another thing I've been catching them on, been catching a few on it, but you know, last few days I've actually caught a few more, and especially if we get the clouds and some wind like we're supposed to the next 2 or 3 days. I've been catching them on top water, and we've been throwing a redfin, a jointed redfin quite a bit. Probably the two main colors I throw is a chrome black, or the other one's called a Smoky Joe, which is a kind of like a bone white sides and belly and a black back. And a couple things I do to the redfin, if you go to the store and buy them, they've got like them saltwater hooks on them. And what I like to do, I like to put them Excalibur hooks on them, a number 2 hook, and I actually put a little bit bigger split rings on them, because the split rings they come with don't rotate through the eyes in the bait. And what happens is it allows your hooks to get in a bind, so when you get a fish hooked up, he's got a little bit more leverage to shake the bait. But you can fish this, back in the spawning pockets where you're throwing a fluke. But where it's going to get better and better is out on main lake and secondary points, close to deep water, and especially over submerged timber. Because there's still a few fish that are coming in that we're catching out there that haven't spawned. But as more of these fish get done spawning, they'll come back out to them points, and it should get better and better. Like I say, especially if we get an overcast day. With that water temperature, if you ever get up there another 5 or 6 degrees, that top water bite will be a lot better. But we seem to keep losing ground on the water temperature. I mean, it gets up to where they just about start to do something, then we have some crazy weather come in. Now, another thing I've been throwing, Lucky Strike makes it. It's called a scrounger head. And this one here is it's a 5/8 head, and what I've got on here is a Magnum fluke as the trailer. Now you can use a swim bait, like a Kitech swim bait, a swim fluke, instead of the junior like we use on the Alabama rig, you use a regular full-size swim fluke, or just a regular size super fluke will work too. I throw the bigger one. I don't get as many bites, but usually they're always keepers. Now throw this in the same place that I'm throwing the topwater baits. So other than that, I mean, a lot of things are kind of the same because the water temperature's been staying the same. Now it's hard to fish a bottom bait in a lot of areas. We've got a big algae bloom, or I guess it's an algae bloom. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. All I know is that green slimy snot that every time you try to drag a Carolina rig or a football jig, some areas are worse than the others, and it seems like the water's so clear that it's growing down a lot deeper than normal. But what I do know is normally when we get up into the high 60s, or mid to high 60s, that stuff starts breaking loose. And I am seeing in some places now where it's coming up to the surface, it's starting to break loose. But the water clarity, it's not as clear as it was a week ago. So, some places now the visibility is only 20 foot instead of 30. But the river arms, like from Ants Creek on up, I've been up in the Long Creek some, and the Kings River, they've got excellent color up in there. I haven't spent a whole lot of time, but a person, and there's some areas that have enough bushes in the water. You should be able to get up in there and throw a shallow crankbait, spinner bait, or maybe even flip a jig or a creature bait. Get up there on them channel swings, where them fish are pulling back out of the spawning areas. The water's a little warmer up there, especially when that sun gets up. That water up there where it's staying like that, it'll jump up to the high 60s. And in that areas too, where that stain is and where it's warmer, the moss isn't as bad as what it is down in the clear water. But like I say, that stuff will be breaking loose, and hopefully we'll see if we got more fish coming to the beds or what's going to happen there. So until next week, good luck, good fishing.